because it's not controlled. Some people will tell you that, yeah, but you get access to what you want. You're not being regulated by iPhone or by the Apple. NDSS conference revealed that there was an organization that took 1,400 applications from the legitimate App Store and compared it to 800 applications from Cydia, and they looked at the capabilities of those applications, and they found that almost half of both samples captured some sort of device identifying or personal identifying information and sent it off to third-party servers. Okay, so that means that the iTunes App Store, the official App Store, their review process is not catching those violations of their terms of services as far as application development and distribution goes. Okay, and that also shows that no more or no less of applications from the official App Store to the third-party App Store are doing that sort of stuff. So developers are getting access to that information. iPhone users think that they're more secure. They're probably not. That review process really is broken to some extent, and that research showed that. So hold on a second. 2010 and 2011. The rest of this discussion is really going to be focused around Android because there really is no other malware development to speak of being done for other platforms besides Android at this point. There you may see stragglers, one or two of them, and we still see new Symbian stuff coming out. But the reality is service providers don't want to talk to us about Symbian or Windows Mobile. Enterprises don't want to talk to us about Symbian or Windows Mobile. They want to talk to us about the iPhone and Android, and that's it. BlackBerry, to some extent. But they have BlackBerry under control with the BES, with the BlackBerry Enterprise Server, for the most part. Android and iPhone is where it gets difficult for them because there's no back-end management functionality outside of the Pulse product to handle that sort of stuff. But Android is the target. It's the battleground right now for mobile malware. There's no question. And the iPhone, consider it to be secure as far as mobile malware goes when compared to Android. 2010 and 2011 are just tough. Droid 09, I already talked about that. That was the phishing scam that was in the market for 15 days before someone found it. 150,000 users in 15 days, that's quite a bit. You have manufacturer threats, the Vodafone example that I already talked about. Commercial and App Store spyware, those are the Flexi spies, the mobile spy, mobile stealth, spy bubble. Those are commercial applications, and usually they run somewhere between $99 and $350 per license for those sorts of things. We have to buy them as new updates are released just so we can make sure that our signatures detect them still. TapSnake, we already talked a little bit about that. Fake players, and this right here is the progression from Droid 09, January 2010 until today. And you're going to see the complexity it's increasing as we go further, because I'll tell you a little bit about each one of these as we get down a little bit further. Fake players, I already kind of alluded to this a little bit when I was talking about SMS Trojans. Fake players originated out of Russia, and what it was the first sample of it was a media player that worked, it functioned the way it was supposed to, it actually played songs, okay? But in the background it was sending SMS messages to 3 different premium rate numbers on the back end. It cost us $6 per message. Exactly a month later, there was an update to it. It was no longer a media player. It was a porno player. I don't really know why porn plays a big factor in malware. It just does. I'm not really sure. But it played porn videos. And it sent SMS messages to the same 3 premium rate numbers on the back end. And then exactly a month after that, so we've got 3 successive updates to fake players. It went back to the media player, but it changed the premium rate numbers on the back end that it sent the messages to. Okay, so we were tracking those, and there's a little bit of an update process. So you start to see the complexities gaining a little bit because you have people who are trying to update these applications. And with the last fake player, there actually came the ability to register the device to a third-party server. That third-party server would send commands into the device, into the malware, to tell it to reach out and grab updates to itself. Okay, so it's downloading applications in the background, which is very interesting because that occurred at the same time that Angry Birds, that a proof of concept application written by John Oberheide John Oberheide is a very smart individual. I know him personally. He literally has broken the communication between the vending APK, the Android market, and the actual official market. Okay, he's broken it. He knows exactly how it communicates, exactly what it does, and in doing so, he was able to break several of the security controls that make up the Android security model. When I say that, there are a couple of things with Android that are supposed to not allowed to occur. One of those is you're not allowed to download an application without that application telling you the permissions that it needs in order to function. Anybody, Android users anywhere? If you installed an application and you see where it tells you that this application, may request permission for services that cost money, internet, that sort of stuff, that's part of the security model. For you as the user to know what the application is doing in the background. He broke that. Okay. He also broke. Wait, is that the only piece of it he broke? Okay, so he broke that. He broke the permission portion of that security model. And what he did was he released an application to the market that was supposed to be just an update to Angry Birds, so that you could go and you could download additional boards or additional levels to Angry Birds. But what it really did in the background after you installed it, it worked and it gave you new levels to Angry Birds, but it also registered the device with a third-party server. It told the server that, hey, I'm alive. The server came back and said, I need you to go to another server and download these 3 different applications and download them silently in the background and install them in the background. And it did it, okay, because he broke that communication or that piece of the communication with the Android market. So those applications that he downloaded, they didn't do anything malicious. He was just showing the ability to do it. Well, right after he did that, the third fake player application had the same ability, okay? So I don't know if they stole his research or they were doing the same research at the same time, but as new things occur, we start to see those newer things exist in malware, and that's just one example. Third-party app stores. These are a mess. Anybody know the relationship that China has with Google? Bad, right? How many Android users are in China? I don't know the answer, but there's about 1 billion people in China, around there? Probably a lot of them. None of those users can get to the official Android market. They can't. The only thing that they can do is go to third-party app stores to get their applications. And this is where we started to see a large amount of pirating occur. You have developers or malware writers who are reaching into the official market. They are pulling out official applications, legitimate applications. They're pulling them apart. They're deconstructing them. They're writing their own malicious code. They're stuffing it into the application so that as it functions legitimately, and the background is doing all kinds of different things. They repackage it, and they put it in these third-party app stores in Asia and in China, where these are the only place that users can go to get them, and they're basically pawning them off as legitimate applications, and they're not. This is where we find, I'd say probably 90% of Android malware at this point is third-party app stores. I said 90% because there are several of them that exist in the official Android market at this point. Ganemi, ADRD, and PJ apps are the first 3 major examples of pirated applications. And we're not talking about just one application. I believe Ganemi, the developers of Ganemi went to the Android market and they pulled out 60 legitimate different applications, stuffed their code into all of them, and basically distributed them in third-party stores. ADRD was somewhere around 45 applications. PJ Apps, we're still finding new PJ Apps applications. PJ Apps came out in February 2011. We're still finding new ones. I think the account at this point is somewhere around 75 or 80 different applications that have this functionality built into it. In the background, these things are doing all kinds of stuff. They're bots. They register devices. You can communicate. They're doing SMS premium rate stuff on the back end. All kinds of interesting stuff till we get to MireNet. That's what we called it. We actually found MireNet first, and we detected it 0 day because of our heuristic scanning engine. It's kind of an interesting concept, but we're able to scan application metadata, and we're able to determine if an application could potentially be malicious. Okay, we found MireNet, and we named it MireNet because the very first developer account that we found, the official Android market developer account that we found, the guy's name was MireNet. And what it did is it did all number of things. SMS charges on the back end, it registered devices, it received commands to start collecting some sort of data on the device and shipping it off. I mean, it's part of a bot. But it also rooted the device. Anybody have an Android that's rooted? Okay, mine's rooted too. And the way that you do that is you exploit one of maybe 2 or 3 different vulnerabilities in the platform. One of them is called Rage Against the Cage. The other one's Exploit. Those are 2 vulnerabilities. Well, the process that allows you to root that, these guys wrote it into their malware. Okay? So in the back end, it's a legitimate application that was taken off of the Android market. It was decompressed. It was stuffed with malicious code, repackaged, and then it was distributed back into the official market as the same applications, just under different developer accounts. Users don't really care about the developer accounts. They just, I want Angry Birds. Okay. Do they know that it's supposed to come from Rovio? Maybe. If they don't, they may get it from MyRNet. And the back end, it roots the device. Once it roots it, it gets access to all kinds of data that a regular application with regular user access of an application doesn't have. Okay? So that's rooted. Now we have rooted applications. I believe we saw MyRNet. It's also called Droid Dream. You may have heard of Droid Dream. Lookout calls it Droid Dream. We called it originally MyRNet, but now we're on the same page as them, and we call it Droid Dream because that's what the media seem to want to call it. We found somewhere around 48 different Droid Dream applications spread across, I want to say, 6 different developer accounts. So it really was a concerted effort. And Android, Google, they did what they're supposed to do, and they've, once it was reported, they went and they removed them. And they also have the ability to reach out to devices and uninstall applications remotely because your Android, your market account is really just your Google checkout account. And they're able to say, determine who has what installed, and they can revoke applications remotely. That's what they did with that's what they did with MyRNet, except for they didn't have the ability to reverse the root process that occurred from it because your device is rooted. So they came out with, I wonder if I have it on here. No, I don't. They came out with an application that they posted to the Android market that was supposed to reverse the root process. It didn't fix the vulnerability that allowed the root process to occur to begin with. They just reversed it. So your device is no longer rooted. Well, okay, they put it out in the Android market. They didn't have to. They had the ability to just push it down to anybody's devices that was affected and let it run, and then it would uninstall itself and it would disappear and you'd never know what happened. For some reason, they put it out in the Android market. 3 days later, we found that application in third-party app stores in China that had been pirated, and it had been pulled apart and had malicious code stuffed into it. So people in China were trying to get the, I don't remember what it was called, Google or Android security update tool or something, I don't remember what it's called. But they were trying to find this because they don't have access to the official market, and their device isn't managed by their Google checkout account. They're trying to get it, and they're downloading a pirated one that has SMS Trojans on the back end. So, pretty interesting. Security models. We already talked a little bit about what Oberheide did, how he broke that security model of presenting the user with permissions that an application wants to use for it to do the things that it's going to do. Another part of the security model is that an application is not supposed to be able to communicate with other applications or with certain parts of the system unless it requests permission from some sort of system API to do so. Okay? What I mean by that is if I'm an application and I want access to GPS data, I don't communicate directly with the service that manages GPS data. I communicate with an API. The API calls down and grabs that data and sends it back to me as the application. Okay? So that's the communication piece of it. But they also don't want one application to communicate with another application at all. There's kind of a walled garden. They all exist in their sandbox so that I can't, as an application, I cannot affect the operations or the data or the information stored or managed or whatever by one application. These guys that wrote SoundMiner, pretty smart. It was a college in Indiana, I want to say Indiana University, Bloomington something. They got together with a college in China, and they came up with SoundMiner. Okay, so the permissions of an application will give you an indication of what an application could potentially do. Okay, let's say I create an application that wants to have access to the device microphone so that I can I can, I don't know, I can record calls or record conversation that's going on in the microphone. If I also, with that application,